All right, it's Thursday, November 14th. We are going to call the Iowa City Historic Preservation Commission meeting to order, beginning with roll call.
Frank Wagner here.
Ryan Russell here.
Lewis here.
Villanueva here.
Burford here.
Thoman here.
Seligren here.
Beck here.
Brown.
Reynolds here.
All right, public discussion of anything not on the agenda. Great. Moving on to certificates of appropriateness. Number 1, 10 Bella Vista Place.
Okay, 10 Bella Vista Place is located here in the Brown Street Historic District that you see. It is this craftsman bungalow. It's up on the bluff. It was built about 1908. It is a little bit interesting. It has some interesting patterning of the siding. It bumps out at the bottom. There's a wider lap. It's still narrow, but a wider lap with mitered corners, and then this band board at the windowsill. It's not a normal place for a band board, really, on a house. And then above that, it has corner boards and a more narrow siding, and then there's another band board at the just below the level of the second floor area. Anyway, a few years ago, or 2 years ago, we approved a demolition of this garage that is behind the house and adjacent to the rear alley. And the owner was going to put another building above it. And during the whole review process and everything, that building wasn't developed very well architecturally yet. And so he ended up pricing it out and deciding he wasn't going to do that. And so now he's come back with a proposal to do an addition to this with a building above. So this is what you see of the garage. It's all a concrete structure. We can see that it was poured with boards holding the concrete because we have the imprint of them on the inside. It's a nice little garage, but there's some deterioration all around it, and that's why we were able to approve demolishing it before, but he is going to repair it now. So here is the location of that garage, kind of from a rear aerial, and there will be an additional stall to the north of it, as well as the building above on grade. This is the site plan for the building. So we have Bella Vista Place is here, the alley is here, the house is located here. I will note that the garage is shown aligning with the house. And the building above will align with the house, but the existing garage does not align with the house. It is located here. Part of that was just simplification of the drawing, but the new garage will be in a slightly wedge shape that no one will see because it's underground, so that it does align better with the house. And then the other building is not going to fit the same footprint. It will just be placed on top of the basement garages. So this is a plan. Again, it's not quite accurate because the second stall over here won't be really square, but it'll be another concrete garage. It will have a door that matches the existing doors on the existing garage, and it will have stairs that go up along the north side. And the property owner will just have to verify that he actually has enough room with the setback requirements. We can't tell from the drawing, and he'll need to figure that out through the building permit process. He has been inspired by chicken coops, and in particular this building that he sent me this photo a few times. He likes the kind of monitor roof that we have going on here. We also talked about the fact that to have an outbuilding in a historic district, especially of this age, it would be most appropriate for it to really resemble an outbuilding, and it could potentially resemble an agricultural building as well, especially since this north side might have had a little bit more agriculture still going on 100 years ago. So one of the things that came up with that is obviously this building is, board and batten siding. It looks like a barn. And so we were talking about how one of the ways to differentiate this extra building from, say, an additional house in the yard was to, really amp up that agricultural building look. And so we were really suggesting that he used board and batten siding and small windows and all this kind of stuff to really hit that home. And given the siding pattern on the house, he wanted to come up with something that was that worked more with the house instead. And so we were talking about this house and how it may be something similar to some of the catalog houses, only all of those special details mean that if it was altered from the original design. Anyway, he still found, this house is not that similar, but there are houses that could be modified to make this house. And this happens to be in the 1908 Sears catalog, which is the year the house was built. And by extension, in that same catalog, there is a poultry house. And so this is something that they were selling around the time of the construction of the house as, either urban or rural agricultural type building that you could buy through Sears and assemble. And so now this has become the inspiration for this extra building he is putting in the back. And so these are the current drawings. And so it would be that monitor roof. There would be clerestory windows, and they would actually align with the windows. We've already talked about that. So this is the south side. So it would have the clerestory windows above, windows below, with a passage door. This is the north side. So the stairs come up the side of the hill, and I believe he does want to put a window in there to get a little bit of light in that new garage stall, and then there would be a passage door on the side. This shows that as you go down north on Bella Vista, you're going down the hill. And so he can't really have the driveway enter into the garage smoothly if he continues that horizontal line on the garage like we normally require for our additions to a property. And so this does show that would step down. It would also allow him to have a larger garage door. So he would continue it would be the same height here, of course. This would step down, and it's showing with equal garage doors, but he is considering having a taller door, maybe to fit a truck or something like that in. So this is the east side of the upper building, and it also has windows. There's a couple on the north side as well. I don't remember if we have a... This is the plan view of that upper building, and so it shows you that closest to the house, because the house would sit over here, there's also a passage door and a window. And let's see, this is just a section. One of the things that came up during this is that, we normally look for an outbuilding to have, smaller rectangular windows. We really trying to differentiate between a house and an outbuilding. And he has had these windows for a long time. They came from this house, which was remodeled I think more than 20 years ago, so he's had them for a long time. You can see that they were hung in pairs. They would be a casement operation window, so they would crank out. He also has this storm window that can be put on. Obviously, with a casement window and a storm installed, he wouldn't be opening them. He'd have to take off the storm in order to do that. But he is proposing to reuse these windows in this new building. The staff review is that it doesn't follow the guidelines and how the guidelines want an outbuilding to have relatively small rectangular windows. And so not only are we doing a new outbuilding and an addition, and that's coming to you, but it's also coming to you for the windows. The proposal or the recommendation includes that if you want to approve the use of these windows, you would approve it through an exception to the guidelines. This is the clerestory window that he proposes to use, and we find that acceptable for that use. We would recommend that north window in the foundation wall resembles this instead of resembling, maybe that looks a little bit more like a slider or something like that we wouldn't approve. So we would recommend that this window is more like the clerestory windows or something similar to that. So the guidelines that cover this, there's another thing, and that's why the balustrades and handrails is there. So as you can see, there is a platform, the roof over this adjacent garage. I'm assuming, since he has a door going out to it right here, that will be used as a patio. Code will require, since people can walk on this and the door leads to it, and there's a drop off to the alley, that a guardrail is there. And there would also need to be a handrail along the stairs just because of the length of the run of the stairs, even though they're in the ground. And so for that, we would recommend, not a typical wood handrail, but a metal, and we would want it to be, black steel or something, and a simple design. And so the recommendation also includes that. For doors, he can't be here tonight, and so in the packet I had included some of his correspondence. He had talked about let me find. There was something about the door that he said he didn't want a wood door. And so we would recommend a fiberglass door then. We don't tend to approve metal doors because they dent and rust and don't resemble wood doors. So we would recommend a fiberglass door that is a half-light 2-panel door, just like we typically recommend on an outbuilding. Otherwise, he follows most of these guidelines. We still have single-car doors. Here's the one about windows. Windows on outbuildings should be relatively small and rectangular or square. And it is disallowed to install modern types of windows, including sliding, awning, casement, and bay windows when they are not original to the building, consistent with the architectural style, or required for egress. And so that is why it would require an exception to approve these. Most of these addition ones we've gone over before, matching the horizontal lines, palette of materials similar to the historic structure. And then for outbuildings, at the rear of the building, subordinate in size to the house. And all of these guidelines we do feel are followed. So the recommended motion, after reviewing this to make the presentation, I added to what was in the packet a little bit, and so I put that in blue. So the recommended motion includes that the south windows are revised so that they align with clerestory windows above. And the west window is centered on the wall, and the north lower window matches the clerestory window. Trim is included as described in the staff report. And here, this is the recommended motion without an exception, that the windows are revised as relatively small and rectangular. And then I added the balustrade is constructed of black steel and complies with the guidelines, and the passage door is a fiberglass half-light 2-panel door. So if the commission wishes to approve the proposed windows, then you would remove this line about relatively small and rectangular and state that they are approved through an exception. Staff would suggest that there's not necessarily a clear exception here. He, in his statements that he included, he really wanted to include additional light. He includes, he'll use this as a workspace. There's no bathroom and kitchen and all of that. This is a workspace, and so he wanted additional light. He also really wants to reuse these windows. So I think that's it.
Is the applicant here for comment?
No, he's not.
Okay. Any public comment? We call for a motion first.
I mean, if anybody has any
Clarifying questions. I'd like to see the drawing and know a little bit more about how the size of the proposed windows compare to where you think they should be, and how the size you think they maybe should.
Well, I mean, we don't have a size that, a dimension.
But this is representative of what he proposes.
These drawings probably are accurate with the size of the window in relationship to the wall. I would assume so. I'm assuming they're drawn to scale. Where did I put the window photos? If you think of this house, this is a very large Craftsman house. But these are also, fairly tall windows. They're not very wide per se. I guess that it's, a relatively small window is probably half of one of these, I would assume.
Okay.
Does the applicant have enough windows to fill the proposed building? Or would they have to, have a couple of them be newly made to match?
No, I'm sure he has plenty, because I think that he has all of the windows from this house, and, yeah. So I don't think that he will have, I think he'll have extras.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's reusing materials.
Just talk in your microphone, please.
Sorry, I think it's a great idea. I think it's reusing materials. I totally agree about the extra light. It'll also make the building look a better match to the house than some kind of a new window. And he's going to use storm windows. I mean, that's historically correct for old houses. I think it's a great idea.
Burford speaking. I'm very much of a proponent of the reuse of salvaged architectural materials. The fact that they're local is even better.
Yes.
I find the windows appear unique and interesting and aesthetic in my view, and I'm kind of excited by that proposal. So I would favor the exception and the use of the proposed salvaged windows.
Do we know if the windows match the age of this type of outbuilding?
I didn't look up when that house that was demolished was built, but it could be. I mean, I'm assuming that house could have been anywhere from 1905 to 25, so similar.
Would that be enough of an argument for it if it matches, they relatively match the age, even if they don't necessarily match the architectural style perfectly?
I think that would be for your
I
consideration.
think it's what we decide, if it's acceptable.
But this is just our main thing is the windows, right? From everything I'm hearing.
You do have to approve the entire project.
Sure, but the
But-
things that we're concerned about, if that's
Yes.
the way I'm going to word that, is the windows tonight.
That's the only thing that did not really follow the
Gotcha,
guidelines.
okay, cool.
And Burford again, and the fact that it's not being used as a chicken coop allows some flexibility.
Do we have a motion?
I would motion it, but I got to see what it is. Reynolds moves to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 10 Bella Vista Place as presented in the application with the following conditions. The south windows are revised so that they align with the clerestory windows above, and the west window is centered in the wall, and the north lower window matches the clerestory window. Trim is included as described in the staff report. The proposed windows are approved through an exception to guidelines in order to bring additional light into the space and reuse historic materials. The balustrade is constructed of black steel and complies with the guidelines. The passage door is a fiberglass half-light 2-panel door.
Wagner, second.
Any further commission discussion on the matter?
I like the idea of approving the exception for the windows. So, yeah.
I do too. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on to number 2, 705 Oakland Avenue in Longfellow.
Okay, 705 Oakland Avenue is located here, just near the Longfellow Elementary School. And this is the house. It is also a little bungalow. This one does have aluminum or steel siding on it. I don't know which one right now. But it's a gable front house with a brick porch and piers, battered columns. And it is a nice, small, simple house. The back has this little bump out that was historically an open porch. It has piers. The skirting area has been filled in with a panel, this little shed roof. Here it is from another view. You can see the piers and the panel. And so they've just infilled the walls to bring it in as part of the house. The project is a kitchen remodel, just located here on the house. So this is the front porch, and here's the area. What they are doing for this project is keeping the roof and then the porch piers and how that works, and replacing the walls, so that basically we're kind of removing the enclosed porch portion and putting an addition on this house that reuses the piers and the roof structure. So it'll be insulated and everything like that. And so here's the footprint of that area. And this is where the refrigerator will go. And so they've proposed a window that faces the west and a window that faces the south. And then this side is the north side, and it's not as easily visible anyway. Here is a drawing of the addition showing that window. It will match the nearby kitchen windows. Here's the window on the south, again matching the kitchen windows. One of the things that did come up with this project was because of the fact that it has metal siding, and we can't approve a synthetic siding on an addition in a historic district, they will need to match the historic siding. And we expect that they'll uncover a little bit of that as they get into the demo of the porch walls and all of that. And so they'll match the historic siding for this addition. And then hopefully someday in the future, some owner will choose to remove all that synthetic siding. So again, for the guidelines, adding windows that match the general type and size and everything of the historic windows in a location consistent with the window patterning. I put this in here because I guess I don't know if they plan to use a wood or a cement board, but generally we can approve a cement board if it's smooth and if it matches the lap. An interesting aside is I was at the Pass Forward, the National Trust Conference in New Orleans last month, and was at a sustainability roundtable with a representative from James Hardy, the cement board people. And I told him that one of the problems with his product is that it doesn't have mitered corners, and it's difficult to match the actual lap siding. And, who knows where that'll go. So then also, because this is technically an addition, it'll again match the horizontal lines. The foundation obviously will match because they're using the piers. Whether or not they replace the wood infill between is up to them. And that the siding matches the historic siding. And then here, it is disallowed to, 1, leave large expanses of wall surface uninterrupted by windows or doors. Again, they're putting them on the west and south side. It is disallowed to add space by enclosing a historic front or side porch. This is a rear porch, and technically we are demolishing most of it and making a new addition. But then it's also disallowed, again, to use synthetic siding. So, and again, I added, as I was going through this, just a few words to this recommended motion, but it is basically to approve it as it is, noting the fact that they will document and match the historic siding and trim.
Great. Do we have clarifying questions? Applicant comment?
You don't have to, but if you want to, just sign in.
Just to say that that porch currently is actually already being used as part of the kitchen. So it's not really a porch anyway at this point. But other than that, it's very thorough. Thanks.
Thank you. Public comment? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Wagner moved to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 705 Oakland Avenue as presented in the application with the following conditions. Historic siding and trim configuration is documented and reviewed by staff and will be matched in the addition.
Second.
Great. Commission discussion?
I probably could have asked this in the clarifying questions, but when you were talking about the side porch and front porch enclosure, as a rear porch, it makes no statement about what to do with the rear porch. So even if this weren't already a part of it, this would be okay.
Right, it would come up for review, but we have approved some enclosures of some rear porches.
Okay, thanks.
In fact, actually, we have actually had some rear additions designed to look like they were enclosed rear porches, just because that simplified some of the, the roof issues and other things.
Thanks.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Thanks. Number 3, 927 South 7th Avenue.
Okay, 927 South 7th Avenue is located here. It's a group of small brick bungalows. There are 6 of them. They all show up right here, that were all built by the same person. And in fact, when this neighborhood was surveyed, it was determined that they were eligible to be a historic district on their own. When we were forming all of the districts, it came up that we didn't want to have a commissioner for every single little historic district. And so things like the Moffett houses on Muscatine were brought into the Longfellow district. In this case, we just did the Dearborn Conservation District and did not we did not make a separate historic district for them. But they are uniquely interesting and beautiful to see. This is the bungalow that we're talking about right now. It has actually a very expressive front porch. We have shingle siding in the gables and on the dormers. We have battered columns, much more severe than the one we were just looking at. Again, brick piers, brick porch, and this entire house is brick, as you can see. Here's just some other shots that we had on file. In the past, we have approved the replacement of the shingle siding in the dormers with, I think, a cement board product and then an AZIC product on the corner boards and the fascia on the dormers. And here's the south side as well. This is one of the only ones that doesn't have a garage. Instead, there's a kind of an adjacent lot that has a garage in it as well on this side of the house. So the project is the replacement of the window sashes, and this came up, and as you know, David Powers and I, one of the housing inspectors, he and I both go out to review windows when they come up. And like many of them that we review, the windows that we saw here were in a good to excellent condition. We took some basic photos and talked to the owner about them. And it does turn out, and as I wrote in the staff report, when they originally bought the house in the 90s, he did rehab all of the windows. He's a carpenter, so he did that work. And now, over the years, he has had condensation and sometimes turning to frost and building up on the windows, and so they're exhibiting some damage. He's done some work in the house, insulating the roof and stuff like that, and so his goal is to replace the sashes, so that he has insulated glass units in an effort to reduce the possibility of frost accumulating on the windows. Just a few more of the photos that I happen to have. When he rehabbed the windows, he did the weather stripping and all of the stuff that we would do to increase the energy efficiency. This just shows the metal weather stripping in the jamb. He replaced the storm windows as well. And here's just a close-up view. Even in the photos I took, this is the south side. So this is the side that's really getting a lot of the sunlight and heat and stuff. But we can see that there's some deterioration to the finish here for sure. These are some of the photos that he has submitted also. He submitted a letter and photos that were also included in the packet. And he has labeled them as well. And they just go through. And so for both David and I, when we look at these windows, we do not consider these in any way deteriorated beyond repair. We see a window where, yes, there has been some moisture that has gotten there. We see a window that probably after, he can correct me, I don't know exactly how long ago they were done, but if it was 30 years ago, I think it's feasible that a finish would need to be maintained or potentially redone over that period of time. But none of this is something that we would typically say is deteriorated to allow us to approve replacement of the windows. Clearly, there's some finish damage. Some of the joints are open. In most cases, when we review windows, if a joint is open like this, most people don't actually do anything about it. They wait until they get much worse. I don't know. When it comes to condensation on a window, it is well known that people, plants, animals, everything that lives within a building creates moisture. And it's just a part of how people live that there is moisture created. In addition, modern mechanical systems create humidity. And in fact, actually in New Orleans, I saw a lot of good examples of historic buildings where even just air handling units and things that circulated the air would lead to condensation around the vents just because they were modern systems added to a historic building. And so condensation can be a problem. It is recommended to try to reduce the humidity in a building. It is also recommended to prevent some frost to allow air circulation around windows. I spoke to one of our window rehabbers, and that's the biggest thing that they see is, we do have a modern interest in not having drapes and curtains so much as blinds, and they tend to be individual, which traps a lot of the cold air against the glass instead of letting the air circulate. But also in our climate, we can get frosting on lots of different windows. I get them on my house as well, and it was built in the 80s. And so it kind of depends on the condition and the situation. There are some other things that can be done to help with that. I mean, people can use interior storm windows as well. In fact, in some areas of the Northeast, that's a common thing where they will have an exterior storm and an interior storm for the coldest times of the year. Interior storms can be anything from an actual wood storm and glass that you put in and take out when you want to make the windows operable to something that's a flexible plexiglass rubber gasket fitting kind of storm window. And so, considering the fact that the guidelines recommend that we preserve the historic windows, that we retain them, that we only replace badly deteriorated ones, the staff recommendation here is not to approve the replacement of these sashes. However, if there were any individual sashes that were deteriorated beyond repair, we would, want to document that, determine which ones, and then those could be approved. But we don't see that the entire house full of windows in this case is deteriorated to that degree. So some of the staff recommendation, just, if David and I review windows, we recommend to people things that they can do. Some of the ropes here had a little bit of fraying, so we would recommend that they would replace any of those ropes if they needed, drying out any damp wood and removing excess moisture when it occurs, touching up finishes to help prevent moisture infiltration into the wood, revising window covering options to allow better air circulation around window openings, and then, if necessary, using internal storm windows. So currently, the recommended motion is a recommendation to approve the project. And the reason why is, even though staff does not recommend approving this, we do have to put all motions in the affirmative. And so if the commission did not want to approve this, you would vote no instead of yes. An alternative, as I said, would be to approve selective window sash replacement. They did submit window sash product, and it is a product that we could approve if the windows were deteriorated beyond repair. And the applicant is here, and he can talk and address any comments that you might have.
Would you like to make some comments? Thank you.
Just come in and sign in, like I said.
Yes, ma'am.
I will also note that many of these window reviews that David and I go on are highly contentious. And meeting with the applicant was rather pleasant. So I will say that.
Good evening. Yeah, I love our old house. It's part of the Palmer brick houses that were built down in there by an old Professor Palmer that used them to house visiting professors for many years. Of all of them, ours is probably the most true to character. One of them has been resided totally with metal siding. Others have changed other characters inside much more than we have. I guess when we bought the house, so my background, I was a framing and remodel carpenter for about 7 years before I went back to college. I put myself through college as a trim carpenter that subcontracted from my old framing carpenter person, and so I would subcontract to trim out the whole house. That's the way I put myself through college. Got my degree in biochemistry and biophysics. I've done research here at the university for about 40 years. I have a shop in my garage that could remake all of these windows. And when we first started, I did remake all of these windows. The person before had let them go to the point where almost all of them had to be taken out, stripped down, repaired. A lot of them had rot in them, which was repaired with the liquid wood type of stuff that solidifies rot. They were glued back together, they were put in. I replaced all the glazing, All the lead paint was removed, put on new paint. Every house, every window in the house was done. It took me over 2 years to do that. I take very good care of my windows. It's not been 30 years since they've been attended to. I attend to them every couple years. The glazing and things has been repaired as needed throughout the whole 30 years. All of them were glued together and repaired when I did it 30 years ago. A lot of them were already repaired for rot. So taking those frames apart to repair them now would require me to steam them apart, break that joint, and try and glue them back together. I would bet that 50% of them would break the frame before they broke the joint, just because of the age of the wood. So, we do repair and release. When we came in, we did everything the National Historic Register had suggested to me. I cut down all the sashes. I put in foam above and below. I put in V-stripping between the windows. The condensation and stuff is an issue that comes from the window being cold, right? I mean, I have nice top quality storm windows that we put on. I took off the old aluminum ones, which they had glued to the exterior of the house. So when I tore those off, I had to do a lot of repair on the structure itself of the front trim because it would pull tons of wood with it when they came off. There was no way to get them off other than that. These were all the things that, the National Historic Register had suggested to do to the windows. My house is about 950 square foot, maybe 1,000 square feet. I have 29 windows. That is the cavities between the windows that aren't insulated equal about a 10 by 10 wall that's not insulated. The windows themselves represent about 400 square feet of exposure, if not a little bit more. I did a rough calculation. We've done everything we can, pretty much. I repaired all the cracks in the basement, professionally filled everything, sealed everything down there, insulated up as far as I could, drywalled down there to eliminate any leaks of air, things like that. Upstairs, we've blown in insulation in the areas where we could, but due to the structure of the house, we had to use closed cell foam on the ceilings of the dormers. All those things have helped. I mean, we blew insulation into the sidewall, dormers and everything. So that's I feel as though I've been a good steward to this old house, which had I not been the one that moved into it, you'd be dealing with quite a much bigger mess, I would believe. I mean, not very many people have the skills I have to restore a house like this. We've done all the trim in the upstairs. We've done the floors. We've kept the original trim on everything. I love our old house. But the cold from the windows, the condensation, and the condensation comes because we got to, you got to keep your blinds down at night to keep the cold out. Otherwise, I'm heating the outside pretty much with a single pane window, even with a storm. I want to live in the house and when I retire. I got my shop out there. I'm kind of comfortable. But I'd like to be a little more comfortable as far as, air infiltration, the insulation between the windows, things like that are going to help. Double pane glass, I know, you know, with a sealed double pane glass, I'm not going to get the heat transfer out or the cold transfer in. I feel as though in order for me to, I'm not going to be able to, I mean, to redo what's there now. Yeah, you know, the finished stuff is every few years they get refinished, you know, because of that. I feel as though, I mean, it's going to help the energy efficiency of the house. It's going to help the comfort inside. It's going to help the noise from the train that's up on the tracks. And I think it would add a lot of value to the house because it would be exactly the same type of sash. It would allow me to insulate everything that I can insulate in the areas, which would be about 600 square feet of wall space total with the new one. Well, 300 in the weights, but the addition of the extra 400 square foot worth of energy efficiency with the double pane and the storm staying in place, which pretty much hides the window itself. The trim inside would look exactly like it is. I'm saving the whole sash or the whole outside frame, the inside trim, and I'm trying to save the frame. You know, if the frame goes, then I'm cutting the whole thing out. I don't want to do that. And I'm feeling as though this is a good fix that will help us be more comfortable as we get a little bit older and also improve the efficiency of the house, reduce our energy costs, reduce our green carbon footprint. I know that you're worried about the sashes themselves, that you don't want to go to the landfill was I think what you guys were really worried about. You know, we have a CSA guy down the street that does urban farming. I asked him, I said, hey, if I do this, you want them? Oh God, I'll take them for cold frames. That's about what they're worth now, in my opinion. I mean, they've been glued together. The rot's been fixed. They're starting to do it again. Wood only has a lifetime of so much. They're not like white oak or something that would last like that. So I just wanted to kind of let you know that I really do care about my house and that I've thought this through pretty seriously. And I've tried all the steps and feel as though I need to move to the next step, which is going to help me alleviate the problem and be a little bit more comfortable in my house. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, we should make a motion before we
You don't have any
discuss.
more questions or anything?
Do we have more clarifying
I have
questions?
what are the storm windows on the outside? They're
Are they
replaced-
Larson storm windows? Yeah.
Yeah, they're 3-track
Mhm.
type storm windows. Top quality.
And do you have, for new windows, who's making the new windows? Do you have somebody who's making the new windows, or?
It's a Sierra Pacific double hung sash kit, so it's a metal clad wood sash, and he said it would be that like a dark green color to match the house.
And you want to do all the windows? You just want to do the ones that are rotted?
I was gonna do all of them. If you're gonna do one, you might as well do all of them. I mean, otherwise I've got a mismatched house. That's not gonna sell real well.
Are you looking to sell?
I'm looking to stay.
Well,
I mean, that's part of the reason why I want to do this.
so selling is not really an issue.
Pardon me?
So selling's not really the issue at hand?
Oh, no, I love this house. I've done so much work on this house. I mean, yeah. I've got my shop outside that I'm gonna, you know, I build furniture out of. My house is filled with mission furniture that I've built.
It's absolutely lovely.
It's a nice house. I love the house.
I want to talk about, and I want to talk about my experience with my own windows. I live in a 1920 Foursquare, and they are in bad condition. And I am very envious of the condition of your windows. I know that I have not seen them in person, but I really do have a lot of faith in our city staff and their expertise. I know that you're an expert in your own home, but I do think that what you currently possess is about as good as it gets. And there really aren't modern alternatives that match the quality of what you currently have. I mean, I know you've thought about it. I know you have, but they look beautiful. And you're in an old home that's going to have leaks no matter what. I mean, even if you were to replace them, you might not solve the problem of air leakage.
It would allow
You should come up to the microphone again if you're going to talk.
it would. You live in an old house, so you know how the window weights and everything work, right?
I do.
And so you've got that cavity there.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the cavity in the middle between each of those windows, which there is about 8 or 9 inches wide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the air infiltration comes from.
Mm-hmm.
That gets filled with closed-cell foam.
Mm-hmm.
They're no longer an air issue. The window themselves will fit much tighter. If you've got old windows, you know that they rattle like this. And there's no real way to get rid of that. I've tried to router in a piece that has a rubber seal that would tighten that up.
Is this due to wind when it's during on windy days, or is it due to
No, it's due to the structure of the
train?
window itself,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
So historically-
there has to be enough play there this way and that way due to the way the weights work for that sash to lift.
So,
Newer types of windows use a different lift system which has more strength to lift that sash so that side and part that touches the window can be much tighter and seal almost, it holds the window in there better. Whereas due to the way the window's built, there's no way to get that here with window weights.
How recently did you put the new storms on?
Oh, the new storms were put on, oh God, when I redid each window.
So in the last couple of years or 30?
No, they're 20-some years old, probably.
I mean, okay, so another personal
Yeah, no.
experience. Like I said, our windows are in terrible condition. It's to the point where I can't even do anything because I'm so overwhelmed by the task. We put on storm windows 2 years ago after we painted our house, and I haven't heard a rattle since. Not a single rattle. And you know how windy it is.
Oh, yeah, no, the wind is broke.
So-
Yeah, the wind is broke.
But I do wonder
They're
if,
still loose there, allowing the air,
I do-
loose air infiltration into the house.
I do wonder
And
if-
the glass is cold.
if rather than
It radiates into the house.
removing one of the kind of key historic qualities of your home, maybe it's time for new exterior storms. which would be a less expensive
Oh, yeah.
option
no, but
and could
there's
make
no
quite a
storm
difference.
window out there that's any better than those.
The Monterey that Knievel sells is quite
These are
good.
like a 3-track storm window that was custom fit to the opening.
Whatever the case might be, my
no,
personal
I
experience is that we're sealed up. I haven't noticed any issues with airflow whatsoever. Condensation is minimal, and it might be something that you look into.
Yeah, Jessica, can you go back to that image where we might be able to see those? Because the Monterey's are flush mount, and those don't look like they're flush mount, are they?
They are
They're-
flush mounted to the interior part of the window, yes. They stick out because
So
they can't, yeah, no, they do that.
So the Monterey's that you're
There's
talking
two
about.
models. There's the
flush mount look like the old Storms and screens, and it fills up the entire window section.
Mm-hmm.
And I've installed hundreds of them, and my experience is that it does make a world of difference in sound
Huge.
and wind
Sound,
penetration.
Sound, wind, movement of any
And
kind.
it might be cheaper. You might be looking at $250, $300 per window, and I'm not sure what the new window, it might be
We've
more
got-
economical.
No, we've got a
approach.
2,000 square foot Foursquare, and it was about $5,000.
Yeah. I fully understand.
One of our
But
issues.
a single pane window is still gonna have the same issue.
One of our-
Even with a good storm window like that outside, it's still gonna be cold to touch, which is gonna radiate into the house and condensate on the window when you try and shut shades at the night to keep the radiated cold out.
I think that one of the main issues that we're looking at here is
Yeah.
breaking our guidelines, which are quite important to
Right.
maintaining the
No, I
integrity
fully
throughout the
understand.
town and setting a precedent for the rest of the homeowners and building owners in town. And you are an example of a very responsible steward of a historic home.
Yeah, I
who's
love my
been
house.
extremely thorough and loves your home. There are a lot of folks who don't. And once we set a precedent, there are a lot of property owners who will take advantage of it and use that to accomplish easier fixes that are using cheaper materials that we won't necessarily be able to prevent, and that which will result in the degradation of our historic properties in this town.
Yeah.
So that's why I think we're interested in encouraging you to consider other options just for a while longer before moving to this step.
Jessica, you said if the windows get to a point where they cannot be repaired, then they get replaced.
Correct. I do want to add a couple things, though. Historically, in order to prevent windows from rattling in the winter, they would adjust the stops on the windows. So they would make the top tight, make them tighter in the winter so they don't rattle, and then adjust them looser so that they operate. Most of the window rehabbers that's all they do, they actually install an adjuster so that they can do that easily without having to remove everything. So it's done with a screw instead. So that's one thing. The
would be
other
an
thing
option.
is that an insulated glass unit has a shelf life, and the seal will break on them, and then those sashes will have to be replaced. There's not a fix for that. I mean, if you had lots of money, you could probably have the seals redone, but they will get condensation in between them. So an insulated glass unit on its own is something that we know must be replaced periodically, where a single pane wood window only needs to be replaced when it's deteriorated beyond repair.
Like mine.
We do also, we
could
have
probably fix
documentation and what we have provided in the guidelines or in the packet, where testing has shown that you cannot recoup the cost of replacement windows through energy efficiency, because the difference between a new insulated glass unit and a single pane with a storm, it's a negligible difference between those two things.
I would tend to argue that that's a statistic that doesn't take into account the insulation that would be added to the empty air spaces.
I guess too, you're stuck, I guess, right? We don't, if there's an exception that we can give, that's great, but I have not heard, at least tonight, an argument that would be the exception that we would give for other things, right? Like the using historical materials because that's what that was happening and we liked that aspect of it and it was a new build, right? That was our exception for that. Here, I don't know that I've heard one, but I don't, unless I'm not. No. Like, nothing that would move us in that direction, I suppose, if that makes sense. Like, I appreciate all of again, everything everyone said about
No, I
the house is great.
understand. Rehabbing these frames that are in there now, as they deteriorate further, is impossible. They've been repaired once. They've been filled with, wood hardener. They've been put together with not a hide glue or anything like that that's easily separated. They've been put together with like a Gorilla Glue type of stuff. I understand. I believe that, in years to come, I'm going to face that issue when I no longer have the ability nor the financial means to take care of it. And what I'm trying to do is, I know the cost recuperation things, I understand that, but there's also the fact that I'm going to be able to insulate. I'm going to have increased comfort inside due to the less radiating cold coming in. It's going to be better on my cooling because I won't have the heat coming in from summer. It's a way for me to stay in the house. We want to be comfortable, I've redone the fireplace. I've redone everything. I've kept everything the same. This is a thing where I don't want to deal with rotted windows when I'm 72. 'Cause I ain't going to be able to pull them out and repair them when I'm like that. So,
So Jessica, going back to the pictures of the windows where you showed where there are rot and decay, let's see the worst one.
I don't know which one is the worst one. Stephen, I included some of your photos, but not all of them. If there are,
the separation joints there, all of those windows were tight when they were redone. I mean, I'm a real perfectionist when it comes to things. I mean, I built furniture. You can't not be a perfectionist. So they're starting to separate now. That's just going to continue. And when that continues, I'm not going to really be able to break those joints apart to repair that sad. They've been that joint there was probably, I'm sure I painted that with wood hardener before I put it back together. And then I put it back together, and now it's still rotting out again. I know that there's people out there that have old rotted windows and things like that, that seem to think they work fine. But I would argue that the ability to insulate and upgrade outweighs the disadvantage that I'm going to face.
Do you appreciate though the issue of setting a precedent for the entire town?
I guess the exception I would call is that these have been rotted out and repaired before, and they're rotting out again. And I don't want to have to deal with it 10 years down the road when I can't deal with it. I'd rather be building furniture out my shop than repairing my windows for another 2 years.
Burford, I have a solarium on my house, and I put insulated windows on them, and 3 of the panels have failed so far. So if you did put in the new sashes, you'd be replacing those, I'm pretty sure, over time.
I understand failure. Most windows nowadays are kind of guaranteed against that for 20 to 25 years. In that amount of time, I would expect 1 or 2 to fail. In that amount of time, 20, 25 years on these windows, the amount of time.
So if they're going to fail at the same time?
Pardon me?
Do you think they'd fail at the same time?
Oh,
If the
no.
new windows are going to fail?
No,
and-
these, I can't tell you how long these are gonna last. Most of them probably, I mean, I know that our standards are different for different people, but they're not solving the problem. And they're starting to rot out again after I've
I guess
already done it once.
in my
and-
mind, it seems like all windows are a problem. They're meant for light to come in and for air to come in at different times. And it's either you maintain, or I've found you get the new, it fails, you throw away, you put in new. And I think that's one of the things we look at too, is being able to maintain and reuse rather than new, throw away, new, throw away.
Most of them don't throw away the whole sash. They replace the sealed glass insert that's then recock that and reutilize the sash itself.
I'm sorry, can you clarify that?
Yeah, I don't think you throw the whole sash if you break the seal on a window. As far as I know, those are put within the sash afterwards, and so they would take that out.
But we are, in this
Effectively.
case, we're talking about removing the entire sash and replacing it with a modern version.
Yeah, but if the seal failed in the window, the new modern one,
Oh, I
they
see, what
wouldn't
you mean.
toss that.
Well, I think as the commission, we have to just go, yeah, go ahead.
Burford again,
Yeah, no problem.
had you entertained the thought of the interior storms? I have no expertise or familiarity with them. I'm just wondering, what would be your opinion on that?
Well, there again, you're trying to insulate against air infiltration. The problem with these is cold infiltration due to the single pane. I mean, it passes right through those. There's no way to keep that out. A double pane sash has a sealed argon or inert gas between them, which allows that R value so that they don't transfer that cold or let the heat in the summer.
I think you might be quite impressed with new storms. I really do. I mean, I know that's not what you want to hear, but one of our main tenets here is to protect historic windows.
I
And
fully understand.
it's very difficult to pry us away from that.
I fully understand. I'm going to leave it up to you folks.
We appreciate,
Yeah.
we appreciate everything that you've done.
It's not my fault.
Well, that goes back to what you brought up earlier, Jordan Wagner speaking about, we have the staff recommendation to start with. So we've seen some pictures of it, of the windows. I would Jessica's recommended some that do need to be replaced and others that haven't, and I would trust their recommendation. Or
Well,
side
we
with
would,
that.
we haven't necessarily determined that there are some that we would specifically approve replacing. If it was a matter of the owner thought that we needed to review some specific windows, then we could do that. I don't know of any right now that I would, so that would be something where if he could indicate currently that, I don't know, the south ones or something, then we could move forward with that. That's what that meant.
probably also add, too, that it's not just your opinion. You went with Dave Powers, and he's much more likely to say, change them. And if he
he
didn't
is.
say that, then I think, it strengthens the argument that we shouldn't, well, they don't need to be replaced.
And this motion is basically saying all of the windows. We're saying if we wanted to do that alternative, then it would be a separate project for selective windows?
Yeah, we would probably do it separately.
Okay, so this would, okay, gotcha.
I would suggest at this point, if you don't have any general questions for either me or the applicant, that you make a motion and then you discuss it.
And the motion needs to be the first motion, or it can be adapted to the
Well,
second, the suggestion?
This would only be basically if, it came up during discussion that there are some specific windows, and it doesn't appear that that was the case. So if in the future or next week that we determine that there are some specific ones we look at, then we would look at them differently. And so I think your motion is just to approve the project, and then you discuss it and decide if you're going to approve it or not.
All right, do I have a motion?
Brown move to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 927 South 7th Avenue as presented in the application.
Lewis, seconds.
All right, commission discussion.
I think I tend to agree with what you're saying with the precedent. It does suck because it does seem like someone who is maintaining and stewarding a house very well. It's just,
It creates chaos.
Well, but in addition to that, I still think that the recommendation of newer storm windows, Monterey's for one, Iowa City Window and Door sells another similar flush mount storm window system, which, again, my experience is it does make, and your experience too, Jordan, huge difference.
Huge
Both
difference.
thermal and
Oh.
acoustics, all that. And it would be substantially cheaper to that alternative than replacing them, which also, aside from setting a precedent, save money.
Yep. That would be my recommendation if I were to make one.
And, there are plenty of historic homes in Iowa City that have those windows. You'd probably find somebody, go look at them. Up and down Summit Street, Longfellow neighborhood. They're everywhere.
yeah, and to reiterate what Frank said too, I think we have your recommendation that says they're not to that level yet, so sorry about, that.
And Dave is a building inspector, Dave Powers. is
Yeah, he's a
building
housing inspector. He used to do, he would be the main lead person on the university partnership houses. So he'd go in and he works with the housing department basically, so that, when people apply for funding through the housing rehab program, then he is one of the people who goes in and assesses the building and determines what work needs to be done and what they'll pay for and stuff like that. And he started coming along with the window reviews just because of because it does tend to be contentious, not having one person review is preferred.
All right, I think we're ready to vote, unless there's further discussion. All in favor? All opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
And I'll be in touch. There are next steps if you'd like. Okay.
All right, item E, report on certificates issued by chair and staff.
316 Church Street is in the North Side Historic District. We approved some repair and redo of the front porch, but now they're just putting in a laundry vent in one of the rear roofs. 826 East Davenport Street in the Goosetown Horace Mann Conservation District. They're re-roofing, but we don't need to approve that because it's a conservation district, but they needed to replace the soffit, so we did.
That was the university project, by the way, that house.
This one?
Dave
Oh.
Prowers, yep.
Interesting. This house at 813 Ronald Street, all they're doing right now is replacing these porch piers. They've started to settle. Excuse me. 416 Reno, a few different things. This is the interesting house that Carl Klaus lived in. He left it to the National Trust, and when he decided to move into assisted living or whatever, he gave it to them then, and so they required that it was both listed in the National Register and locally designated to protect it, and then they sold it in order to fund some of their programming. One of the interesting requirements is that the new owner is required to make it open to the public periodically.
Oh, my God.
And,
It's for sale.
and it is for sale.
Yeah.
They did do a garage project that we did not get historic review for, so there's currently a notice of violation about that, and we're trying to work through that process. We're struggling with getting drawings. And you'll see another project later in the list, but this one started as just the porch step, this railing, and this railing replacement, and when they got further into it, they found a lot of rot in the base of the columns. This is one of those situations where I did help them assess this, and it was noted that the bases of the columns would need to be replaced, but anyway, it was discovered again during the project. And so they have new flooring and some new railing, and they have a contractor who is turning new bases for the columns. I am a little bit concerned. Historic columns were made to drain. They had a hollow center so that any water that got into the porch roof structure could drain through the column. The column usually was set up off the porch floor, either with actual feet or with little lead squares. And these column bases were replaced, and I'm sure that they blocked all of that drainage. And so any moisture that got in the column just pooled on top of the new base and rotted it out. And there was no airflow around the base of the column at all. So I'm sure they're going to be solid bases again, so it could potentially happen again. But that's one of the things that happens when you start fiddling.
Why is the porch not painted?
It's just done.
Okay,
Like, just
gotcha.
last week, kind of thing. We had some minor reviews. This one was just replacing these steps and this handrail. The handrail needed to change since it looked like a deck railing. We got new signage here at this local landmark downtown that used to be Gray's. They're putting a signage that's mounted to this not historic transom window. They'll also have a little projecting sign from the brick. And I think this is the second time we've approved a sign here, so there must be some turnover.
What's an energy bar? Is it an oxygen bar? What are we doing?
Yeah, I don't, it's hyper
Okay.
energy.
Avoid that area.
This one was approved as a minor review. It actually should have been a certificate of no material effect. It's just replacing the awning fabric, and because it has words on it, a sign permit is required, which means that we review it. You know, that's the local landmark, the Iowa City Post Office. Okay, so this was the first project. Here's the front porch on that house, and here's the south side porch. And with the proximity of the shrubs, this was really rotting out, and so he replaced all but what you see here. He did have this I think it's an Amish contractor that he's been using. I'm not sure, but I think so. And they copied all the spindles, so they're exact matches and stuff, which is really kind of nice. This is just on College Street, 1129. It's considered a non-contributing house. It has a little garage with its historic door, but it was rotted out. Unfortunately, it is replaced with just a flush door. There's no windows or anything in it anymore, but it is the simplest door that we can approve. Intermediate review. On the landmark house on Kirkwood, the rear addition, kind of addition, is a kitchen, and it had windows with raised sills put in it long ago, and the owner decided to replace those with full-height windows, so they'll fit the opening again, which was nice.
Do we know anything, have they progressed any further with their garage project?
It came in like $100,000, so they are
Ooh.
not proceeding. I think that had to do with, it was an extra large garage. It had multiple doors. It also had a step down in the grade and some interesting drainage and other kind of sustainability things going on with it. So I think that was part of it.
Okay.
This is Landmark House up on Melrose. It has shingles everywhere, and they are replacing it actually with a metal roof, made to look like shingles. Not a standing seam metal roof. One unfortunate thing is that it does have all its original copper gutters, but they're all damaged, and so they're all going to be removed. The carriage house, though, has internal gutters, and those will remain, and those pans will be replaced. The copper gutters on the house are being removed and replaced because we don't regulate external gutters. I've talked to them about scrap value and even looked it up for them.
Is that, the metal roof, is that, it's got the granular stuff on it to look like shingles?
No. Like right now, it's just asphalt, flat
Right.
shingles. But yeah, it's one of those products where it's like three-dimensional formed shingles. Like
It's the
there's-
house across from Prussell School.
The
has
one that you worked on has
Right.
it. There's also one on Clark Street, closer to Court. It's the white kind of colonial on the west side. And then there's also one at Muscatine and 7th. They all have, and then the apartment building north of the Bloom County House also has a metal shingle.
Right. Anybody tell them metal roofs are hard to put out fires?
No.
Stick with asphalt?
We didn't talk about that.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
Deanna?
Oh.
Consideration of minutes?
Thoman moves to approve the minutes for the October 10th, 2024 meeting.
Did anybody have any issues with them?
No.
I just defer to you.
Wagner, second.
In favor?
Aye.
I appreciate it.
I guess commission information, I don't have a lot. We need to kind of retrack and look into the Summit Street Monument, and so I'm going to maybe start looking into that a little bit. I have some thoughts, so that might come up in the future.
Okay.
We've been working on the awards. We had planned to send the letters out next week, but I don't personally know if we'll be quite ready for that yet. But
We are moving along.
we are moving along. Well, I can tell you about, so the Pass Forward Conference in New Orleans was spectacular. It started with poor travel. I had 20 hours of flying instead of 6 because I got delayed until I couldn't meet my connecting flight and had to spend a fun night in Dallas. So I missed the first 20 minutes of the conference because that's exactly when I showed up in New Orleans. It was The National Trust is basically the nation's nonprofit historic preservation organization, and they do a really great conference. There was a lot of focus on sustainability, like this roundtable where we discussed all aspects of sustainability and historic preservation, including, how to educate and lots of different things. I personally did one full-day session that was formal training on historic building assessments. This is something that I do just generally kind of here, but in a limited capacity, but I've also done in other forums. And it was really exciting because we totally got to crawl all over a historic house in New Orleans. And we assessed 6 different areas, including interior, exterior, all that. And I was in charge of structure. And it was fun and a great learning experience. And, when you're at a conference and something lasts all day and you're not tired of it at the end of the day, that means it was pretty spectacular.
You went into the right field.
And of course, then in the after hours, there was, drinking lots of drinks, but that was after hours and stuff. But there were tours and, all of the other things that you would expect. And so there are some of the sessions I can probably make available to you guys as things come up and stuff. So I don't know. Did you have anything else?
Yeah, I do want to add, there is, okay, so I am going to need to step down as chair, which is a bummer because I have quite enjoyed my time with the gavel. Andrew is vice chair. We will be putting the position of chair up for a vote next month, and then the change would be in place at the January meeting. So we've discussed that we would basically just switch places. I'm just moving into a role that's going to prevent me from being able to do cherry things. And Andrew has just demonstrated wonderful spirit and competence and enthusiasm and learning and all sorts of things. And you're very organized, and so.
So you're, like you said, you're switching places.
Yep. So then, Andrew, if you're gone, I would lead the meeting again. So if I'm really in the mood to lead the meeting, I'm just going to somehow sabotage your trip over here, over to the city hall.
An insane thing is I looked at my calendar and I was like, I might have to miss January's meeting.
Oh, really?
Which would be fun as if I was chair.
Yeah, we like that. Okay.
Bye. Yeah. But
That's fine.
But I
That's
can
fine.
figure that out.
Just let me know.
Yeah.
And by the way, it will be a formal vote. So if someone here actually otherwise does have aspirations for either position, then we would throw your name in for the vote as well.
We know it's not Toman.
Just so you know, but.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you're both very capable, and so I'm glad we're not losing you at least.
No, and my term goes through this coming summer, and then I will reassess. We'll just see. But-
Okay.
All right.
Wagner moves to adjourn.
Yay.
Lewis seconds.
Beck seconds.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.